How's it going, guys? Today I'm going to show you how to plant fruit trees into heavy clay soil. Most people know that the ideal soil for planting a fruit tree is something that's high in organic matter and has good drainage. But most people don't have those conditions. People are working with heavy clay soil, poor soil, and stuff like that. So the soil you have makes a difference, but different types of soil require different planting techniques to give your tree the highest chances of survival and then growth later in the future. So what I have in this location is soil that's pretty heavy in clay. The drainage in this soil is pretty poor. So here's what I'm going to do. What you want to avoid is making a big hole, taking all that soil out, and then filling it with good soil and calling it good. Be like, yeah, I'm going to make this place good. Take it all out, put new soil in. The problem with that is what you're making is a bowl where water collects and has nowhere to go. You're basically rotting the roots out. There have been studies done where trees were planted into such holes with good soil, and then trees that were just planted on the surface and then mounded up with soil over the top, and the trees that were mounded up did infinitely better than the trees that were in the hole in heavy clay soil. So what you want to avoid is making a bowl or a hole in somewhere that water will collect. So I do want to take some of this top layer off, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a little bit of this off to help me mix in what I want to mix in here. Remove just a little bit of this top. Now this soil isn't too terrible. It is high in clay, but it's not all clay. If you have 100% clay, you don't even want to dig at all. You want to place your roots directly on top of that and mound it up with some soil. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some compost into this hole. In my case, it's composted goat manure. There's a lot of debate on whether or not you should fertilize your trees when you're planting them, whether you should add stuff or amend the soil in the hole before you plant. My take on it is a tree needs nutrients to begin growing. If you don't give it something to jumpstart it, it'll take longer to establish. The issue is a lot of people are planting trees who don't know or don't have experience on this, and they'll overdo it. They'll add too much fertilizer, too much manure, and essentially that's a lot worse than not amending at all. So you want to be careful in what you use. Don't ever use fresh manure or chicken manure or something high in nitrogen directly in the root zone. Be careful. Goat manure is high in pH, so even fresh goat manure is pretty safe if you just spread it over the top after you plant. But if you're amending something that's in the root zone, use something that's a little more composted. A good indication of if your manure has aged enough or composted enough to use in the root zone when planting a tree is if you see any weeds growing out of it. This section here, I know it's composted enough to be safe in the root zone because the plants are already growing out of it. And it's not even completely composted, but just because it's goat manure, it's really high pH, and I can see all kinds of bugs in here. So if you mix this into the soil when planting a tree, the tree will be better off. Throw some of this. This is kind of a lot. Take a little out. I'm going to mix this in with the native soil. It's a lot more clay the deeper I go. Okay, so where the shovel is where the tree needs to go. This is how I aligned it. Right there. So, if you have any roots that are curling in on themselves or kind of crisscrossing, you want to take some time and spread them out as best you can. This will increase the chances of the tree surviving. It's not difficult to do, but it does help. And I'm going to take the soil that was mixed with the native clay and just start putting it right back where it was. Stuff that's more fine, closer to the roots. You can start throwing some of this top layer that we took off back on. Notice this is the ground level right here, and I even have a little bit of roots that are above the soil line. If you have sandy soil, you don't want to plant above the soil line, but if you have clay soil, you definitely want to plant above the soil line. This will increase your chances. it's straight. Don't want to stomp too hard, but I just want to make sure it's straight. We still have a little bit of roots above the soil line, which is good. I'm going to add a little bit more compost on top. All right, now I'm going to put some more manure on top. On this top layer, this is where you can get away with some fresher manure, and even then you don't want any of the fresh manure touching the trunk. So I'm going to push the fresh manure off to the sides and fill this center section with some of the stuff that's a little more composted, like this. Throw that in the center. Don't want anything fresh touching the tree. People will argue you don't want any mulch, anything touching the trunk. That's not true. If you have mulch up against the trunk, it's fine. Compost up against the trunk is fine, as long as it's not really deep. And anything that's fresh, keep it further away from the trunk to avoid burning the trunk. Rotting the trunk is not so much of a problem as burning it. If you have a manure that's high in nitrogen, it will burn the trunk if it's next to, really close to the trunk. Now I have quite a bit of manure here. The reason why I can get away with putting so much manure on here is because this is goat manure. Goat manure is high in pH. Naturally, it's one of the safest manures you can use. If this was any other manure, horse manure, cow manure, you want to be careful with how much you put on, because you can put too much and burn the roots even on the surface like this. So I don't want to mislead anybody showing that I am putting this much manure on top. This is goat manure and this one is safe. If you have cow or horse, you want to put less than this. This is one wheelbarrow full. The last thing I'll do is I'll add some mulch as the top layer over here. You can never put too much mulch. I could honestly put 2 more wheelbarrows on this if I really had a bunch of extra mulch, but I have a bunch of other trees to mulch, so this will do the trick. This will keep the moisture in the summer, and this will evaporate or displace extra water in the winter. Works both ways. And as these break down, they will feed the tree over time. The other thing the wood chips will do is they'll absorb a little bit of the nitrogen from the manure that's on top, and it's going to help them decompose as well and feed the tree more. Alright, so with what I've done here, I don't need to do anything to this tree for the next 5 years. This is basically all the food and nutrients the tree needs to give it a start and continue on for quite a while. Actually, you can, if you want, to continue mulching this tree every year or every other year, it will help, but you don't have to. You don't have to go in there and dig around the tree to aerate the roots. If you do it this way, all the beneficial organisms, the insects, the worms, will aerate the soil for you. You want to let nature do the work. Don't work too hard. Mimic what nature does. So the other thing I want to do is prune this tree. I can't stress this enough. If you don't prune your tree when you just plant it, the tree can suffer or just completely die. I see oftentimes people buy these trees from Costco or other stores and they just have nice branches, it's big and tall. Well, what you don't realize is they chop all the roots off to fit them in the bag to sell them to you. And then people feel sorry for the tree. They don't want to butcher it. They leave it. And then everything just blooms out on every single branch, sucks all the energy out of the root system, and the tree just dies. You always want to keep it balanced. So the less roots you have, the less you want on top. So I'm going to take some of these branches off here. Okay, so these branches down here are too low, so I'll take these out. I want to take them out as close as possible to make a smooth cut. This way it'll heal better, and that's why I like the double-edged pruners. You can really get a tight cut. Just slices it right off. So I took all the lower branches off. Some of these little branches I can leave. This is a good area for it to branch out on. I'm going to take this top section over here and just take it off completely. I don't really need it. Take this dry one out. Anything dead, anything really small, take it out. Heavy concentration of branches all on one side. So I'll have a branch coming out this way, this way, this way, and then whatever else comes out here, I can choose branches later. But the main thing is, you want to be sure to take some growth off because you want to balance out the amount of roots versus the amount of top growth. The last thing I'll do is put something around the trunk to protect it. Move this up. Keep the rabbits and the voles from chewing on it. Bury this in a little bit. And that's it. Alright, this is it for today. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.